Which colours are staining colours? That's what we're going to look at in this video. Now, I'm going to do another video later on about how to use staining colours in watercolour, but today I'm just going to explain to you which of your colours are staining colours. So we're going to start with the pinks and the purples, but first let's learn a little bit more about staining colours. Now, it's almost easier to explain what they aren't than what they are. So what they are not is colours that have opacity to them, that are slightly muddy and opaque, and they are not granulating colours. That's colours that have large paint pigment pieces in, which give you a speckled effect when you paint with them. Now, staining colours are not better than other types of colours, they're just different. I've had a lot of people say to me, oh, well, I only want to use staining colours. Honestly, if you do that, firstly, it's unnecessary, but secondly, you're limiting your colour choice an awful lot, because the truth is that many pigments are still made from natural materials, and even with those that aren't, there are limitations to what can be produced. So if you only choose staining colours, you are limiting yourself from using a full range of colours. That said, staining colours are incredible. They're fantastic for mixing, and they're fantastic for layering, and they're really important for getting strong tonal contrast as well, because staining colours are a bit like inks. They're strong, as their name suggests, they can stain. In other words, they're hard to lift out, and they're very transparent. So they glow brightly and they sit nicely on top of other colours. So let's look at the colours I have here. Now, this video is not long enough to show you every staining colour in the world. I don't know every staining colour in the world. Oftentimes manufacturers will give you some of that information if you go to their website. It may even be listed on the side of the tube, but I can show you the most common ones and the ones that you'll most commonly find in your own paint box. Now, here I've got purples and lilacs. I've got sort of warm reds, in other words scarlet reds, and I've got cooler reds, and that would be pinks. And I think actually I've got crimsons in a separate pot to this one. Yeah, you'll find most of the staining colours in these two outer ones, in the cooler shades. Warm reds are much less likely to be staining colours because a lot of them are cadmiums. Now, cadmiums can be very strong dark colours, but they're slightly opaque. And within warm reds, and again, I've got this in another box. I keep sort of having more and more boxes as I get more and more colours. But within the warm reds, you've also got all of the earth reds, things like Venetian red. Most of these are just a version of red oxide. Earth colours tend to be very granular and quite opaque and quite granulating. So you're going to find most of your staining colours in the bright pinks and in the dark purples. So let's swatch some. So here's one of the most common staining colours, and that is a permanent blue violet. So this is a really rich, strong purple. I'm painting on a paper here that's got quite a lot of texture. I suspect it's actually a mixed media paper. It's just a sample pack that I found, so the colour's not applying that smoothly. And here's our very strong staining purple. Now we can water it down and we can still get a lovely strength of colour. Look at the grain I've got in this paper. It's a very strong grain, isn't it? And here's our staining colour. So let me show you the difference between that and a purple that isn't a staining colour. So here I've got some cobalt violet hue, and this colour is much muddier and much more opaque. Many of the staining colours are synthetic colours, and an example of one type of synthetic colours would be the quinacridones. So I've got some quinacridones in my violets here, but I've also got this rose quinacridone. This is a beautiful staining colour. And for other pinks that stain, you'll find permanent rose and opera rose too. You can also get some bright clear oranges. Remember, your cadmium oranges won't be staining colours, but there are some colours within the orange range, and orange is a secondary colour, so it's a mixed colour. You will find, just like purple is, you will find some staining oranges. And many of the warmer oranges are more of a staining colour than the cooler ones. If you are enjoying this video, can I ask you to do me a quick favour? Can you please click that like button, that thumbs up button? If you like, share, subscribe, or leave me a comment here on YouTube, all of these things are free. It will help my channel to grow, and I can teach more people like you how to paint and draw. So let's look at blues and greens next. Now, we talked about quinacridones. I want you also to remember the word phthalo, P-H-T-H-A-L-O. It took me a long while to get the spelling of that one right. Phthalo colours are staining. This is another type of synthetic colour. There are many versions of phthalos, and you'll see that word phthalo popping up time and time again within your blues and greens. This is a tube of Daniel Smith green gold. It's a mixed colour, which means it has more than one pigment in. But if you look on the back, you'll see the word phthalocyanine, which is the long version of phthalo. And so this colour has phthalo in it. It's one of the most beautiful transparent greens, and you can see how it really glows. So here we have some phthalo green, which is a very bright blue green. It's pretty unnatural when used on its own. You don't want to dump lots of it in landscapes, but it's great for mixing with. In cheaper sets, this is sometimes mislabeled as Viridian. I have a whole video about Viridian green. I'll try to link that one in the description of this video. So of your greens, phthalo is the most common staining green, and when you find other staining greens, 9 times out of 10 they've got phthalo in. So we also have phthalo blue. Now the good thing about the blues is we have a large range of staining and non-staining colours. So here's your phthalo blue. And you may find this mixed into all sorts of tube colours, including some turquoises, but we have other options for staining blues as well. Here is another one that's very commonly found in your palette, and that's Prussian blue. A similar colour to this, but a little darker, is indigo. Indigo is also a staining colour. There are also within the blues many other colours that are the polar opposite of this, being heavily granulating. That would be things like cerulean and ultramarine and cobalt. But the ones you're most likely to come across in a beginner's palette, for example, would be Prussian and phthalo, and those are your staining colours. So let's look next at yellows and neutrals and black and white. Now when it comes to yellows, you're going to find a lot more of the staining colours in the warmer yellows. Remember that word quinacridone? Here we have quinacridone gold, again a staining colour, a synthetic colour, very beautiful and very transparent. And here it is. Now another really well-known staining yellow is Indian yellow. I only have a tiny little bit left in this tube. Indian yellow is an incredibly transparent colour. Now you'll find far less options for transparent colours within the cool colours with things like lemon. Almost all of those colours have some opacity to them. Many of them are based on cadmiums, and so you'll find far less choice in the cool yellows. What about earth colours, browns, ochres, all of our neutrals? Again, you can get very strong colours here, but the majority of them are granulating pigments, and that's because most of them are still made from natural minerals. So they're literally dug up out of the ground. It's very rare to find a transparent one. There are a few exceptions, but you mostly want to be looking for your transparent colours within your primaries and secondaries. Let's look at greys and blacks. Now, Payne's grey is sometimes considered a staining colour. And here's some Daniel Smith Payne's grey. I always used to consider this a staining colour, but actually you often find some granulating pigments within it. Nevertheless, when compared to other greys and blacks, you're going to find this one of the most transparent ones. If you've used anything like Davies grey, graphite grey or carbon black, you'll know that most of them granulate quite heavily. I should also give a brief mention to neutral tint. Neutral tint can also be fairly transparent. But just like Payne's grey, it's a mixed colour. In other words, the manufacturers design it themselves and each manufacturer has a different version. So at the end of the day, the best way to find your staining colours is to swatch all your colours and just have a look at them. Lastly, let's talk about white. It is the very nature of white to be opaque. White is a surface that reflects all light, not a hue in its own right. Though you may have a white in your watercolour set called zinc white or Chinese white that seems to be semi-transparent, all it is really is just a weak version of white. It is the nature of white, sometimes called body colour, to be opaque. So it could never be considered a staining colour, and you won't find it in any staining colours. And if you mix it in with your staining colours, you'll cause them to become opaque, which is why in most forms of watercolour painting the white of the paper is used, because the white of the paper will glow through your staining colours, whereas white paint will make them opaque. So to recap, remember the words quinacridone and remember the word phthalo or phthalocyanine. And for your warm yellows, you've also got Indian yellow. I think Winsor & Newton do a transparent yellow. And your quinacridones go across the purples, the violets. We've even got a quinacridone gold. Your phthalos will be more often found within your greens and blues. You're more likely to find staining colours within cool purples and pinks than within scarlet and warm reds. And you're more likely to find your staining blues within the cool end of the spectrum, in other words heading towards turquoise. And less like this one here, they've probably been mixed with some staining yellow. And you will find very few staining colours within your earths, your greys and your blacks. And it's really useful to have a few staining colours within your box. I'll be making a video about how to use them soon, so don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this 3 essential tips video. Before you leave this video, don't forget to have a look in the video description. I've got lots of free stuff down there for you. I've got free downloadable PDFs with art tips on. I've even got a free watercolor painting mini course that you can take. Don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and you can watch another one of my videos right now.